guys, we're back again with another video. This time we're going to be discussing ways that you can modify and make accommodations for those special needs learners in your language arts class. And just a reminder that everything that we're going to be talking about today also would work with EL students and any students really in your class who are struggling, okay, be it gen ed or special ed. The first thing that I want to talk about, which is such a big issue for special needs kids in language arts, is whenever you're reading a story or a novel, they struggle a lot with visualizing the text. Comprehension, that's a big piece in language arts that our kids often struggle with. So I just wanted to share a couple of strategies that I use with some novel units that we do to really help kids to visualize the text. The first one, the first example actually that I have is one of the books that we read in 8th grade is To Kill a Mockingbird. And if you are familiar with this book, you know that it's a very complex novel. It's got a lot of themes, a lot of motifs, and it's got a tremendous amount of characters. And there's a lot happening in this book, and a lot of characters that are really difficult to sort of visualize, but also the setting of the story. It's difficult for kids to kind of visualize that. So one of the things that I like to use, I found this fantastic book on Amazon, and it's sort of a visualized graphic version of To Kill a Mockingbird. So this would be the book that the students would be reading in class. And then this book right here is actually fantastic because it's got basically every chapter is broken down. It's got visuals, it's got an explanation of what's happening, and it also gives you some vocabulary at the bottom for kids. But again, it's not too much. It's not too overwhelming. And if you notice, this book is a lot thinner than the novel, so the ideas and the themes in this modified version are going to be just the most important. They're going to only hit on the real main ideas for each chapter. And the graphics are great. I actually used this with a student I was working with who had Down syndrome, and we read the book aloud, and then he worked with these graphic pictures, and it really helped his comprehension, and he loved the book, and he understood what was going on with the book because of this. So this is a great support, and this type of thing should be available for almost any novel that you're reading with your class. Another thing that we like to use that's really super important, it probably seems pretty basic, but you know, any type of visuals that you can provide kids. This is a good example of, for To Kill a Mockingbird, we have the town of Macomb, Alabama, is where the story is set. And they talk about a lot of different locations in the story, and it's really difficult for kids to kind of have an idea of, well, how far away is Miss Maudie's house from the square? And how far away, you know, does Bobule live from Atticus? And so a teacher friend of mine who is actually she was an art teacher, she created this for us. And it just gives kids a really nice visual, very simple, gives them a visual of everybody in the town. And we can refer to this when we're reading, and it kind of gives kids that visual of the town and helps them to sort of comprehend what's happening there. And then finally, another thing that I like to do when we're reading aloud is a lot of book publishers have illustrated classics that you can purchase, and they're pretty inexpensive, and they're fantastic because not only is it at a lower reading level, but it gives you just some fantastic visuals. And so as we're reading, I co-teach with someone in language arts, and as she's reading the novel out loud, when we come to these key points in the novel, I'll be at the overhead projector or at the projector, and I'll be sort of moving through the pictures and projecting them for the kids as we're reading. And it really keeps the kids engaged because you can see them sort of looking up to the board to see what the next picture is going to look like. And it really helps. You can see the artist does a great job. There's a lot of detail here. You can see the dogs are malnourished and are dying in this picture. So the pictures are really high quality, I feel like, and they're really good at helping kids visualize. Okay, the next thing that we're going to talk about is characters again. I kind of touched on this earlier. Some books do have a lot of characters, and that's hard for kids to keep track of. A lot of times they get them confused or they forget about them altogether. So there's a couple of different things that you can do to help support your kids in remembering and telling the difference between the characters. There's a website that a friend of mine introduced me to called Storyboard That, and it's absolutely fantastic. You can create character cards for any novels or books that you're reading, short stories. You can make timelines for history. You can do all sorts of things. So we created these cards for To Kill a Mockingbird. So it gives you a picture, a visual of the person, their name, and then just a real brief description of the character. I have these up, and I put them up when I was working with my student with Down syndrome. He would run into class every day, and he would immediately go to the board and grab these and put them on the table and want to get them organized because he just loved working with these. And it really, really helped him to keep track of the different characters. And if somebody in the novel died, he would turn that card over, and that was a good visual for him of, okay, that person is dead. So again, I had a lot of success with this, with level 2 students and students that are, your real struggling readers. And again, this is storyboardthat.com. Another thing that is important too, that the kids are getting that information written down. This is just an example of a character chart that we have the kids do when we're working with Agatha Christie's, and then there were none. There are 10 main characters in the story, and then there's some alternate characters that are minor. But again, it's kind of hard to keep track of these different people, and so we have sort of the character's name, the reason that they came to the island, what is their occupation, what are they accused of doing, and how did they die. And so this is really important, and for my special needs kids, I would definitely allow them to use this on a test or a quiz, just to help them keep track of all that information, because my kids, my special needs kids, will confuse the names with each other, and it just leads to a lot of confusion. So this has been real successful in helping kids keep those characters straight. And then another idea too within your classroom is, if you're artistically inclined and you can draw pictures or print them off, have them, nice and large. I would say put these up on the wall. We've got these. These are ones that we used from Call of the Wild. We had a lot of students that were really into the story, and they cared a lot about these dogs. And so we had these pictures up on the walls of the classroom. And then as the dogs passed out of the story for various reasons, whether it was they were sold or they were killed or they died, the dogs were taken down off the wall. And so the kids really got involved in that. They got really invested with the characters because we had them up around the room, and we had some pretty high quality pictures that I was lucky enough to get somebody to do for me. So again, another great way to help kids keep track of those characters. Another important thing with literature is vocabulary, of course. As teachers, we all know that helping kids build their vocabulary is really important. They need to learn that new vocabulary. That's only going to make them a better reader. And so I do a lot of emphasis with my students on vocabulary building. And one of the things that I found that works really well for my special needs kids, for at-risk kids, and also for EL kids, I had a student a couple of years ago who was a English language learner, and he had a lot of success with pictures. And so we had a lot of vocabulary in language arts that he had to memorize for the quizzes. And so what I would do is I would make these little picture cards with clip art, and I would drill with him every morning for about 5 minutes. It really didn't take a lot of time. And I would pop up, put up the picture, and then he had to provide the definition and the word. And we drilled this. Again, you need a lot of drill and practice, but we drilled this frequently, but really for just about 5 minutes a day. And when the quiz came, he was acing all the quizzes because he remembered the pictures. Now on the quizzes, I would provide the pictures for him that we had practiced with, because again, I'm not a gotcha teacher. I want to give him the quiz in the format that we studied so that there's no surprises. This would be a less modified vocabulary quiz that I might provide for a student. It doesn't give them anything but the picture, and then they have a word bank. If I have a student that's a little bit needier, I might do a little bit more. This is an example of a vocabulary quiz that's a little bit more modified. I have the picture, and then I provided the definition. Then they have the word bank, and they have to provide the word. So this would be a little bit more modified for students that might require that. But again, I found a lot of success with these types of vocabulary activities. Another issue that we are frequently looking at in language arts is, in order to make sure that kids are comprehending the material, we want to have frequent checks for understanding. And when we say that, we're talking about daily, especially for those special education students. We want to make sure that we are checking in with them every day to make sure that they're understanding the material, and if they're not, we need to identify what they're not understanding, and we need to fix that before we move on. So a couple of examples of the ways that we do that. For To Kill a Mockingbird, we actually have some chapter check-ins or little chapter quizzes. They're not really scored. It's really more of a whole class thing that we sort of put up for students. But after we read every chapter, we make sure that we go through each of these little quizzes. And it's just a way to make sure these are the main things that happen in the chapter. These are some of the main characters that we were introduced to and events. And we want to make sure that kids are getting that information and that there's no confusion. If there's some confusion about something, we want to fix it. So again, we have these for several of the chapters. They're pretty short. We just want to hit on the main ideas. You'll notice that there's not a lot of questions per chapter. It's really just hitting on those main ideas and making sure that kids have the basic idea for that particular chapter. And then if you look at Teachers Pay Teachers and a lot of other curriculum companies, they also have sort of little mini quizzes that you can do. This is an example of one that we have from Woods Runner, where it's just checking in for the last 2 chapters to make sure that kids are understanding what's happening in the book. So again, just another way to check for understanding. Another issue that we find with kids who are struggling readers is that one of the reasons they're not comprehending the material is that they don't really have that background knowledge. Some kids haven't traveled very extensively. They haven't been exposed to some of the things that other students have been exposed to. So they don't have that background knowledge. They don't have those experiences. So one of the ways that we can build background knowledge with kids is with nonfiction concept books. And if you are familiar with Reading A to Z, that's a great website where for a subscription fee, you can actually download nonfiction materials. When we were reading Call of the Wild, we had students that didn't know what the Iditarod was. We had students that didn't know anything about Alaska. They had no information, no knowledge base at all. And so these would be a couple of books that would be good examples of things that we might read with kids before we read the novel. What is the Iditarod? How does that connect with Alaska? And then giving them some basic information about Alaska, because that's the setting where the story happens. So in order to aid in the understanding of the novel, they need to know what Alaska's like. They need to know about the history behind it. And so these would be some great ways to build that background knowledge. And the last thing I just wanted to talk about real quick was plot outlines. There's lots of different ways to do that with students. I've seen graphic organizers where teachers have worked with students on plot outlines. If you're looking for an interactive way to do that, especially to make it more visual for your English language learner students and for your struggling students who need that visualization, again, the website storyboardthat.com is fantastic. You can create those storyboards for really any concept and any subject matter. A colleague of mine actually created these for The Raven, and she went through and created a plot line for The Raven. So we have the introduction, we have, get these in order, the rising action, we have the conflict, we have the climax, and falling action, and then our resolution. And, you know, if you want to take it a step further, you can have kids as a project or as an activity, have them go on Storyboard and create their own plot outline. That would definitely be a fantastic way to make it interactive and interesting for kids. But again, these are great for helping kids to visualize and really get the elements of the plot outline. So that's about all the tricks that we have for you as far as making modifications for your language arts class. Thanks for watching, and we hope this video is helpful.